which we have replicably measured 30 to 300% growth effects applied to agriculture and measured pollution reduction, like measured a dramatic reduction in chlorine in water. And there's a shower nozzle version of that you'll see there too. And basically the molecular cluster size, as I said, goes way down, so you get solubility up. And
hey,
it's like making gold powder out of gold. It becomes soluble in water and blood, and you have the life-giving effect.
Now,
and
can you connect that to your tap?
Yes, although it was originally designed as an agricultural device, it can be plumbed in. There's a new version of that, which is called the commercial version, which takes higher pressures. You can see it all. There's more pictures and more science background of that at fractalfield.com/imploder news.
Yeah, because if everybody had one of those in their house, it would be a good thing.
Well, the concept is so instructive that just looking at it and see how the water implodes tells you how to hold your heart. It's really good.
Right. It's like a teaching device.
Yeah, well, it's how water becomes centripetal, actually. And, when Schauberger built that vortex, and now implosion research at Plymouth in the UK, Jonathan Dolly, you have a 50,000 RPM impeller, and you got a little toroidal shape made out of silver. And you're spinning this vortex, and you dope the water piezoelectrically. And then when the water begins spontaneously getting colder, and you start getting voltage from gravity, and it works so good that Hitler wrote a check for the generator, that the area around the imploder gets blue, and if you sit it on the land somewhere, pollution begins to clear up all around.
Really?
So it's really, Schauberger's dream taken to electrical engineering. But the reason the voltage difference happens between the centripetal bottom point and the periphery point is the same reason you get voltage out of a pine cone.
Right. Only on an inorganic sense. I mean, you're creating a technology, right?
In both cases, you're designing an electric field that creates implosive collapse. Let me give you an example. There's a device called a Steorn device, Irish, that makes voltage. They don't know it, but it comes from gravity. And the reason it gets voltage from gravity is because they got a pulse, and the pulse decay geometry, the caduceus of the K geometry, is phase conjugate. And that's called implosive collapse. Another example is cavitation heating, where if you get the bubbles in the right geometry collapsing in water, you get a net energy gain, cavitation heating. And the reason you do is implosive collapse. Another example, the capacitive cone that Trevor Constable used in weather engineering in the high seas that best made rain was a 60-degree capacitor cone, orgone, specifically for the reason that the phase conjugate implosive angle. So you have implosive charge collapse, which teaches the water vapor become centripetal, which is how droplets form.
Now, you mentioned orgone, or that's part of it, right?
Yeah, we think that Wilhelm Reich did not serve by inventing a new word. The correct term is phase conjugate dielectric, phase conjugate field. But, James DeMayo and these people haven't accepted the electrical engineering language, but they've done great work.
Oh, yeah.
To teach it in correct electrical terms, however, you would not use the word orgone. You'd use the word phase conjugate dielectric. You'd measure it in terms of harmonic inclusiveness and centripetal force. And they do get the seed germination effect, but they don't explain it electrically correctly.
Right. Now, would you agree with the electric universe theory?
Yes, absolutely. It's good work because they're describing plasma distribution. 99.99% of the universe is plasma, which is simply a cloud of charge. And the way that charge becomes centripetal is fractal. That's the point. And that's how it enters circulation. And the physics of that is a symmetry set, which is the Ophanim-Enochian alphabet. John Dee learned and taught Shakespeare, and that's how alchemy was formed, actually.
Right.
It's all fun stuff. goldenmean.info/Ophanim. You can see the whole symmetry set.
And that John Dee was a big character in history and Shakespeare as well, right?
Well, John Dee was he was the Einstein of his day. He was a specialist in hypercube physics, hyperdimensional mathematics, and he had learned a lot of the languages on planet Earth, and then he said he wanted to talk to the angels, and the Ophanim knocked on his window and handed him a green stone. And the symmetry of the plasma fields in the green stone, which is still in the British Museum, became the Ophanim-Enochian alphabet. You can see the roots in Greek. And the symmetry of those plasmas, which is called plasma residue, origin of alphabet, and the sequence of those plasma fields, called Ophanim-Enochian alphabet, which is Greek and Cherokee and others, basically is how plasma domains become centripetal, which is how interstellar plasma clouds form, speaking of electric universe, which in church you call the bodies of angels. And so when you learn to invoke those symmetry operations correctly, then you can call storms the size of continents. I've seen it many times. And that's what we need to learn. One of the things we need to learn in order to survive the solar wind, actually.
So you've seen that. Now, have you also seen it, storms dissipated?
I have to say that in my 20 or 30 years of Kundalini experience, I'm very good at making rain and very bad at stopping it.
So you're a rain maker, not a rain stopper.
Yeah, there's something about my DNA. It's the Tutankhamun memories.
Oh, okay. Okay.
See, the priests were using Tutankhamun for weather control because, after 100 generations of pharaohs, each of whom would be fired if he can't make rain, eventually Tutankhamun knows how to make rain.
Or lose your job, right?
Right, exactly. So it gets in the DNA, man.
Ah, okay. And now, would that lead to... It's a weird question. I wonder if that would lead to the arranged marriages and genetics and how bloodlines and things like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think the education on that is to study how the Reverend Mothers in the Dune series selected who should have babies. The Dracos managed the bloodlines of the royal families of planet Earth for 3,000 years, like we do show dogs.
So Draco aliens.
Well, the Draco were called the
species.
Or Uras, Alpha Draconis. Alpha Draconis is the shape of the Arabic letter L in the star map of Angkor Wat and the Senshi pyramids, because that was the home culture of the Alpha Draconis, the Uru culture. And that's basically who we call Grandma or Adam and Eve. And it's the people that Enki's family were running from, or they were part of it. But long story. Read Anton Parks. It's good.
Yeah, no, I've seen the whole breakdown video that you have on the history of the human race and stuff. It's absolutely brilliant.
The fun part of that is the genetic story. Basically, the Draco culture had lost the ability to propagate immune systems in their babies. And their kids were no longer getting good jobs because they couldn't steer stars. They couldn't steer...
They couldn't star travel.
They couldn't steer starcraft, what you call a guild navigator in Dune. And what that meant basically was premature aging, loss of ability to lucid dream, and loss of ability to take memory through death, because the DNA was losing phase coherence, because they didn't fundamentally have the idea how a soul gets into DNA, which we now know. It becomes phase conjugate and centripetal. Requires the hygiene for bliss.
Right.
So they were basically losing it bad. And so at that time, a symptom of the fact that they were losing it was that only cloning was legal for a way to replicate.
Right.
And so Enki's family had to run from them laws of the Dracos because Enki himself disobeyed the law. And so his family was running away from Pleiades, and they came here. Long story. And so that's called the Nephilim, or